Oh, that's the last of the coffee. Ooh, instructions. Oh, too much espresso this morning for this kind of work. Well, it's still pretty cold out today. We did get new parts in. New cylinder, new piston, new rings. But the last 2 days it's been feel like 2 degrees with the wind and the cold. The pond iced back up. But today it's supposed to warm up to maybe 50 or so. I should get a little sun on the back here so my fingers aren't freezing trying to do this piston work. But we should be able to, now with these pieces, get back to doing our testing, start and fire. So let's get this set up to do some more work today. What do you think, Chloe? You think today's the day? Okay. Here's our original cylinder, original piston. We've taken a look at this. And it's interesting, you can see it is worn. I still have the oiler ring on here, but there's some slack. Oh, it's so cold on the fingers. Oh my goodness. We have a new set of rings. And looking at these, a couple of different colors in the rings. The lighter ring goes on the top, and then followed by the darker ring further down, and your oiler rings on the bottom. And these ones are marked with the word top. Really tough to see, but right at the end of my thumb it says top. So you know that which way this ring goes. If it doesn't say top, there might be a manufacturer's logo or some form of a marking to signify top. On this one also I've got the word top. Tough to see. Actually it says top 2. So the other one said top 1. This is top 2. So it'll sit like this on the piston. And there's our oiler ring. All looks good. And these 2 rings that go on either side of the oiler, doesn't matter what order they go on. New gasket set. Interestingly, I think they sent me another spark plug. No shortage of spark plugs for this rig. Let's take a look at our cylinder. Okay. There we go. I'm going to slip on a pair of gloves now and turn my heater on. While it may warm up to 50 today, it's still a nice cozy 35 or so. Okay, all looks right. Cut out here. And underneath we do have a new, I forget the technical term for this, I think it's the wrist pin. We got a new wrist pin. We have new retaining rings. And this piston looks right. When I was looking online, I was finding that they were claiming that some of them that were the same size for the for a 250 would also go on the 350. Or maybe it was a 225 or a 250, but that's a much smaller displacement. And this is a 343 cc displacement. Here's our piston. A little bit of oil already on it. Got our arrow marking for exhaust. And really nice. Sits nice in there. Okay. Step 1, thaw the fingers. And what we will do is I'm going to put one of these retaining rings in before I go over to the quad, and then all I have to do is push that wrist pin through one and only get one ring on. Only have one chance to drop one of those rings down in the lower part of the motor. So this is where we're going to start. So let's set this head off to the side. Let's get this opened up and get one of these pins in. And to do this, I do this with a pair of needle nose pliers. So let me walk over and get those. I'm just going to get my first pin in here. And then I'll go over to the bike. It's just easier to get one in, so I only have to put one in when I'm over there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay.
So these pins will hold this wrist pin in. It holds it to the crankshaft. And they're a little finicky to get in, but it's easier for me to do one here and then put this over the crankshaft, push the pin through, and only do the other one retaining, because when you're doing that work, there's a risk you can drop this.
Yeah,
if it goes in the bottom of the motor, you gotta take the motor off.
No good.
That would be real bad.
Well, I'm gonna let you do your thing. I'm out here cheerleading.
Okay. Got one in, so now when we get out there, we'll slip this over our piston, slip our wrist pin through, do our other one. Before we do that, I'm putting the rings on though. To put the rings in, I like to do the oiler ring first, and I like to do that because on the inside it's flared. So this one's got to sit behind the rings that sit on the top and bottom. Show you what I mean here in just a moment. So sitting down in here, that flare is filling the gap in the back. So if I had these rings in first, I wouldn't be able to get this ring on second. It would be sticking outside the piston head. So now that I have that first one, or excuse me, this ring in first, these rings, and I can carefully go over, just kind of walking over it, and now it'll just sit right down in there. And if I had done that ring before, I'll call it the perforated ring, the actual oiler ring, this wouldn't have worked. And we'll walk our next ring on here. Really not difficult. And I'm looking for the gaps in the ring, so I've got a gap there, and on my bottom ring, they're pretty close to each other. I am going to carefully spin them a little bit. I don't want them lined up. Might actually be easier for me to just turn this over and redo this ring than try to slide it in there. There we go. Now I have my top ring gap on this side and my bottom ring gap, well, just about almost exactly 180 degrees off. Now we'll find our dark ring, our center ring. Make sure I have the marking for top. There it is right there, top 2. And this one's going to be a little bit tighter to slip on. Now I'm going to show you before I slip this on, a little tough to see, but there is a chamfer. There's a kind of a bevel cut in. And that bevel goes towards the bottom of the piston. But again, you're paying attention to the marking that indicates top. There we are. I've got this gap, and I'm not going to leave the gap there. I actually don't like my gap sitting over my exhaust or my intake. I'm going to have it 90 degrees off from there, so I'll have a gap on this ring here, and then I'll come 180 degrees for here. The only reason I think that is, for example, here's the exhaust, sits down like this in the motor, and if I had my ring gaps sitting like that, just when the motor's sitting, everything drains down to that end. Again, there's our top. We're gonna set this one in 180 degrees off. And just like that, ring gap, our rings are in. Now the reason for all these rags shoved in anywhere I can get to the bottom, if I drop this and it goes in the bottom of the motor, we gotta split the case again. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that at all. So piston, arrow pointing to the exhaust side, and I already have one of the retaining rings in here, so I can just push this wrist pin through. Nice and snug wrist pin. It's the original wrist pin. You know, some discoloration. I don't feel any wear. Still plenty snug. So I think this is going to be our challenge today. Alright, arrow pointing down. Yeah, okay, she'll go. There, huh? Just about. There we go. Feels nice. Nice and snug. Now, we've got to get our remaining retainer ring right in there. Everything's blocked up so we don't drop it. Get one side in. Keep my finger over it so this thing doesn't go shooting anywhere. Take my needle nose. So I've got one end in there, got my thumb over it. And really what I come in and do is I grab the end with my needle nose to kind of shrink it and tighten it. Oh, too much espresso this morning for this kind of work. Making sure it's in the groove all the way around. We're good. Our piston is back on. We can take all of our rags out from around that are keeping things safe. Make sure we don't leave any pieces down in there. Check our gasket seals, make sure everything still feels nice. Let's go get our cylinder, go get our gaskets. All right, here's our paper gasket. And we're going to be extra careful because on the last paper gasket, I pinched a corner a little bit there, putting everything on. So in an effort not to do that again, get our timing chain up through. Our piston head, okay. Now, one of the reasons that I might have nipped that I am missing a piece right there. There should be a round kind of bushing sets in to guide all this. Go take a look for that. On the old head, there's a little bushing still on here. We're going to take that off. Alright, now I've got that bushing in the new head. So when we slip this back on, we're going to be careful that we don't punch a hole in our new gasket there. Now this is the trick. These new rings are likely to be pretty tight to get on to the cylinder. I've always just done it with my fingers, so hopefully today is no different. Yep, with my fingers, just kind of working it around. I'm over the first couple of rings, and I want to keep as perpendicular as I can. And just like that, no special tools needed. Alright, let's get our timing chain pulled up through, and this is why I like to have the timing chains on a zip tie. Much easier. Oh, cold metal is still a pain to work on though. There's our timing chain. So now back to being careful with our filter here. Very nice. Gonna come around that side. Right there's what I'm watching for. Make sure everything goes down nice and clean. That looks like it has sat down really well. Okay, so I have one Allen wrench bolt. We still want to be careful because we drop anything down here, we still drop into the bottom of the motor, and we don't want to do that. But this bolt simply holds the jug from sliding around as we do any extra work or any additional work here. Just like that, we're now going to our next gasket, metal gasket. Can only go on one way. One of these holes is a little larger. It's going to go over the head bolt hole that actually fills oil, is what I'm going to call it. We're going to put a lot of pressure on this gasket because ultimately this is where we can have a leak. Basically, we're at top dead center or so with that piston sitting up there. And when we sit our cylinder head on, you get an idea. That's the chamber. Piston's sitting right there. There's the chamber. Running my finger around. Feels nice and clean. Actually, while I have this open, feeling for cracks or anything inside here, nothing. Here we go. Get this positioned. It's going to be a little tricky. We're sitting down nice and even on that gasket. So next we have two bolts that'll slip in right here and hold the cylinder head to the jug. Keeps everything sitting together. Again, continuing to make sure that we don't drop anything down, like the bit on this screwdriver. Kind of risky using this tool for this. We don't want anything falling down in here. This brings us up to timing. We're still sitting on perfect top dead center. Timing gear. There's a mark on there for top dead center, which aligns with that little cutout there for the gear, which is going to be straight up because we're lining up for this. Another important thing when you're looking to do this is don't have your timing chain tensioner in. You'll never get the play you need.
That part that you needed in?
Yeah. So
You didn't lose any parts?
Didn't lose any parts.
Have you tried to turn it over?
No, we're not there yet.
Oh.
I gotta put, there's no carb, there's no exhaust, there's no timing chain.
I suppose those would be important.
Yeah. Now that that piece is on, I've got to rebuild.
Oh, let me open that.
Son of a gun, we're making a little bit of progress here. So we are covering some ground here, finally. So next, let's get our timing chain tensioner in. To do this, there's a little catch right here. Just press this catch, put this in, let that catch out. Oh, hang on. I think I actually need to take this bolt out for this to happen. There we go. Yeah, take that spring out, and now I can push that catch. It'll sit, and I can set this down in. Oh, and excuse me, there's only one way for it to go, for those screw holes to line up, so you can't put it in backwards. So I'm just watching it. There comes my intake valve opening up and closing. Now I'll watch for my top dead center to come up. The next time I'll know I'm on the compression stroke, not the overlap stroke. And I feel the compression coming. T. Right now is a good spot to pause and do our compression check again and our leak down test again. The piece that sent us all on this journey. So we have our comparison numbers. We have enough oil in the motor to do this right now. I'm gonna have to top that back off. So let's set up and let's do that again. I'm actually gonna jump to the leak down test first because I'm already set up here on top dead center. Get my little mechanism for holding myself on top dead center here. Should be good. Make sure I'm nice and tight up here. I think I already hit this. We're good. Okay, I have my little bit of play. Yes, I do. I put the cover back on that, but we're at top dead center here. I've already covered up my mark, but we checked this just a moment ago. So let's do our leak down test. Oh boy. Done a lot to get to this point. We last did this test 4 or 5 days ago, and we discovered we had 13% leak down in our cylinder, and less than 5 you're good. Once you get to 10 to 15 you've really got to do an inspection, and the chart doesn't even go past 15. I think everybody knows what's going on at that point. We're at 13. So, and then ultimately the parts came in 2 days ago, but the temperature was so cold that I didn't come out here to work on it. My brother-in-law's birthday was yesterday, and our hope is to deliver this coming weekend. All that hinges on it running. So, yeah, we're setting up again. We are over 100. We're fine there. Top dead center, threaded in. Let's start putting some air to this here. There we go. What's it look like? Pressure in the cylinder. Wow, look at that. Almost exact. 8 and 8, 10 and 10. Oh boy. 20 and 20. Oh, we turned over. We were having 0 leak down, but then my hold on the other side didn't work. Let me set this up again. Okay, I had to go back around and put some oomph on that clamp with 0% leak down up at 20 plus there. That put a lot on the cylinder. I don't think I'm going to go very high here. We'll probably spin it again. But setting back up on top dead center. That's a lot of PSI coming in. And there is a safety to this. We don't want to go too high. I'm going to stop it at 30. Oh, there we go. That's awesome. That is, that's showing 0. I'm getting to 30 PSI, and then there's just so much pressure because there's nothing leaking. It's forcing the cylinder over. That's really encouraging. 30 PSI, and there's so much force it's actually forcing the cylinder over from my woodworking clamps there. When I was doing this the other day, I could hold just fine up to 80 PSI without turning anything over because, well, we had so much air escaping. So I'm going to continue putting this back together here.
So close. That's almost there.
Oh, that's the last of the coffee. All right, guys, here's where we're at. Move back inside, and we have fuel, we have spark, we have compression. At this point, I'm wondering if my pickup coil, my pulsar coil, whatever you want to call it, is not sending the signal at the right time to the CDI to spark. Been reading on some forums, seen some folks talking about that, so I do have the spec for the resistance on what this pickup coil should be. It should be coil on a 350 ER pickup coil resistance 170 to 210 ohms. Alright guys, I'm starting to study my pulsar coil here, and I hook up my voltmeter. If I put my voltmeter into the blue and white ends of the connector here, which is the blue and white coming out the pulsar side here, I get a reading where it should be. I think, well, I'll plug it in so we can see it. You can see that 188, right in spec. Here's what I noticed. Looking at this, I found some electrical tape tucked in here, and on this wire, really kind of cut and beat up. I don't know how much of that is affecting things. I'm going to inspect these wires more, see which one that is. Alright, I was doing some reading on that pulsar coil, that stator. Really hard to find wiring diagrams for the 1989 YFMER. You can find them up to 88, and then you can find them at 90 forward. It's almost like 89 was an odd year or a change year that they only did for a little while. But I have some thoughts. Clearly we have a frayed wire there. I'm going to trace that back. I think that frayed wire should go to the CDI, which signals to me that that should be sending a signal to the CDI on when to fire, and maybe it isn't. So let's look at this. Coming off, we have a brown wire and a red wire. These will come off of the you know, the pulsar coil and the stator down in here. And they do. That red runs right into, excuse me, the brown runs right into the CDI. The red does as well. There we go. So we get an orange, runs back into the harness, red and brown to the CDI. 4-way plug with all 4 in there. And what else do we have coming off of here? 3 blacks, 3-way plug, another 3-way plug, yellow, white, and green-yellow stripe. Tell you what, this thing is becoming a challenge to figure out. Okay, anybody placing bets on whether they think this is it? I think this engine will roar to life after this. Do I have a CDI issue? We're just testing right now, so I'm not even going to clean this up a whole bunch. This could be backfire.
Okay.
Alright, so one more thing today, because we got to keep marching forward, because I'm going to wait for a new pulsar pickup and a new CDI to come in to get that electrical track down. We're going to do the seat cover. So we were able to get a new cover. Cindy ordered this for Josh so that he'd have a nice cover coming in. I've done these before, and I tend to leave everything on underneath here that's holding everything together. I mean, this duct tape is just fused with the seat. Leave all the material on there that we can. Ooh, instructions. Start in the front, center. Start in the front, center, and hooker staple into place, then stretch to the back, center, or into place. Don't start the sides until the front and rear are stretched. All right. I tend to use an air stapler. For this, the traditional staplers just haven't done a reasonable enough job. Get a staple in there. At this point, I'm just walking around and securing it. I've done my stretch. Okay. Stretched around, really kind of lined up with the seam here. Folded the corners. A little bit of difficulty here with the 1/4 inch. Might have to come back and touch that. Ultimately, hindsight, I probably could have stretched this whole seat so the seam was just on the bottom versus the edges. And I say that because I think I could have taken some more out of here. But that is a much cleaner, sharper look. Very nice. And nice centered Yamaha logo. So yeah, I did that with 1/4 inch staples regulated at 120 psi. any longer and those staples might start to come through the plastic. You might be able to get away with a 5/16 or an 8mm staple. I haven't tried that. And if you get the angle of your staple on it just right, you get the staples in nice and deep, you might be able to go up a little more than 120 psi to do a little better. But I think the big thing, stretch over the front, stretch over the back pretty good, and then just really crank it on the sides and you'll get it. All right, that's done.